Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Eulogise Me, the podcast where I invite my guests to write their own eulogy. I know, interesting concept. We then get them on the pod to read their eulogy and we discuss what they've written and see where that conversation takes us. In this week's episode, I have comedian Lewis Badham. Me and Lewis met a couple of years ago. It was at a comedy night in North London for Big Nose Comedy, I believe it was called. And the first time I saw Lewis perform, I didn't know, but it was his 6th gig. And I could tell that he was nervous. I could feel that nervousness that was palpable. But what I could see really clearly in Lewis was his ability to write. And he has a really lovely comedic brain when it comes to writing. And he's someone that I've developed a bit of a friendship with over the last few years. So it was really fitting for me to have him on this podcast. I really enjoyed this episode. We had a really lovely chat and it went all over from his history, his upbringing, his struggles in life, and also how he's overcome a lot of those struggles. So I hope you stick around for the whole episode. It's a really, really good one. You could do me a favor by liking and subscribing to this page or this podcast, wherever you're listening or watching. Tell a friend about it also. And if you hear something along the way that moves you, makes you laugh, or just inspires you, pop that in the comments. Let me know. But with no further ado, let's get into the episode. Here is Lewis Badham. What? No, I've got no doubt that you're going to be articulate, but
Twister.
We're both stand-up comedians, so you know.
Wow.
Even
Allegedly.
Well, nah, I put it into it.
You more so than me, anyway.
Hell no. There's no. Listen, if you sit down on this sofa and talk to me, then I don't allow negativity. It's like nothing but positivity here for the two of us, man.
It's not so much that I'm shit. It's just I haven't gigged since November. So
the thing about you, right?
You don't feel like you are one.
Well, you know what? Because from the first time we met. It's funny. You meet some people, and especially when it comes to comedy, you know, you can just see someone on stage, and you know, like they've got a comedy brain, and they've got a comedy brain. Their writing's there, you know, and that's what did I say? What was that first time we met? What did I say to you?
I said, take your hand out your pocket. You did.
Did I?
Move the mic stand out the way because it was my 6th gig.
Right.
When I saw you, move the mic stand out the way. But I can tell you can write. You've got good jokes.
Yeah.
And the confidence will come basically. And
Yeah.
just keep doing what you're doing. And a couple of, like I said, little tips of get your hand out your pocket.
Yeah. You know, I feel
Which I still do, by the way.
But I feel
I
feel so bad, bro, because I put my hand in my pocket too. So sometimes when anybody would ask me for advice or whenever I'd give advice, I would always preface it by saying, I know nothing. However, I'd say this, right?
Yeah.
Because deep down, I do really feel like we don't really know anything. You know,
especially not this early on as well.
No, it's like and
you know more than we did then.
Right. But at the end of the day, we're still learning. And like whether I've got my hand in my pocket or not, I don't think that's going to be the difference between whether I'm a good comic or not. You know, like when you really break it down, but at the same time, if I said anything that helped you,
you did.
You did.
The mic stand was big because no one told me that before, and now I do it all the time. Yeah. And I must admit, the last gig I did have my hand in my pocket, and it does enter my mind. You got your hand in your pocket. But I'm like, but feel comfortable. Back then, it was a barrier.
Got you.
Me. Like I was doing it because I was so nervous and because I was uncomfortable and I was stiff.
Yeah.
Now I do it just because I'm comfortable.
Got you. And you know what? That's a big distinction.
That's a big difference.
It's a big difference. Just do me a favor with the mic. Just try and angle it so it's directly on. Just because that would be good.
Just try and get comfortable.
I don't want you to be uncomfortable, but then I do want to get I want to get your lovely tones in there. But am
I going to be too far away for you?
No. It catches you all the way in that corner. But you be comfortable, man.
Yeah, this is better like this.
What was I gonna say? But yeah, that, and I know, like if I've got my hand in my pocket, I know I'm doing it because I'm comfortable also. Like, but I can also feel if I'm doing it because I'm nervous.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, Musin, his name is Musin Yesalada. He said to me, he saw me at a gig once, and he was like, "What was going on with your shoulders?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "You were like this."
Oh, really?
Right?
Yeah.
And now I'm so conscious of it. Like if I'm tense, my shoulders do this thing where they come up. But if I'm at ease and I'm relaxed, then I'm just flow state, man.
So mine, at the beginning of gigs, my hand shakes. And Mia, who's my ex that comes to a lot, I think you've met her before, she was like, I tell you're nervous because of your hand. And I was like, oh, fuck, I didn't think anyone noticed that. But now I'm like, make sure I'm like, I got a hand in my pocket and on the mic, so you can't see it shaking. And then after like a couple minutes, it stops because I get first couple laughs, a little bit of interaction with the audience, and I'm like, okay, I'm here now.
Yeah.
But even those first few seconds where you're introduced, you say hello, and then there's that deathly silence of expectation. What's the first words going to come out of his mouth? It feels like an eternity. And they're the moments where I'm like, oh, fuck, well, I'm on stage, what am I doing?
I know exactly
and
what you
get
mean.
it out and it's okay. And you're like, all right, okay, it's all right. I've done this before. I remember this now.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes, you know how we were talking before we started recording, and we were talking about the idea of when you just say the thing that's happening in the room, people laugh more. Yeah. Like if your joke isn't working and you acknowledge it, then there's an honest laughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh, you didn't like that one. It's like,
right.
Honesty.
Like I've seen some comics at times go on stage and literally say like to the audience, like, relax. Yeah. I've done this before. All right. And sometimes if you find your own way of doing that, you know where you're going, you know your jokes, you know you're going to get them there. It's like, I know, I get what this looks like to you right now, but this is not what it is, you know? Yeah,
I like to address things and like literally maybe even say that I'm nervous. Maybe even say that, like, God, it's always so uncomfortable, like the first few seconds.
Yep.
Because then it's like, and I was thinking recently, talking about like, why do I even do comedy? Like, even saying that to the audience, like, I don't know why I do this.
Why do you do it?
It makes me so fucking nervous.
Yeah.
Like, and then just write some jokes about that, and then it's like I'm having an honest conversation with the audience. Then I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh, you know, what about Pop-Tarts or whatever? I'm like, you know,
you're coming from a real place.
Yeah. And I would appreciate that.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm sure audience members must sit down sometimes and think, why does anybody do this? Like, why do we do it? You know, like it's a weird thing to say, I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to tell you some things. And my intention is to give you the opportunity to laugh and laugh at this. Like, it's a weird thing to get up one day and say you want to do, but there's a love. You got to love it. You got to love it.
Yeah. I ask myself a lot why. I genuinely do. And sometimes I do think like, just why? You know, do I want to keep doing this? And there's something that I just can't stop. There's something there that's like, if I said the words, I quit or I'm not doing it anymore, I'd want to get back to it immediately. Yeah. So it's like, you can't quit. Even though there are so many times where you think like, what do I get out of this?
Yeah.
And then you're like, you know, obviously there's great things. Obviously you meet great people. Right. When you have a good set, even the feeling of getting a laugh is like taking a hit of a drug. Like, and especially I've been gigging so sporadically over the last couple of years, the build-up's been, don't think about it. And then a couple of days before you're nervous and you're thinking, oh fuck, what am I doing? And then you do the set, you know, you get there on the night and you're shitting yourself. You do the set and then afterwards you're like, oh, I want to go up again. And that's why you do it. Because for that feeling.
It's addictive.
That's why you do it. And then the next day it starts all over again and you're like, fuck, I'm not doing that shit anymore. Right. And then you go and do it and then you love it and you can't help yourself.
You can't. And it is addictive. And you know, you drive for hours to do 10 minutes of material somewhere. Like that is like, you tell it to anybody else, they'll be like, well, that sounds like an addiction. You know?
Yeah.
But there is something special about it. And once it grips you, you just can't let it go. No. I heard this comedian, his name is Nate Bargatze, and he has a joke where he was talking.
Nate, I like him,
yeah, he's so good. And he was talking about the fact, he had a joke where he was like, I was going to quit, but like, there's no one to quit to.
I heard that. Yeah.
Right,
there's no boss as well. You write to and be like, I quit. Yeah.
Right, like if I stop doing comedy tomorrow, no one's really gonna care. Like, you know what I mean? Like there might be a few people who might be like, oh, I noticed you ain't gigging no more. But then they're just gonna book the next gig and they're gonna keep going. Like you know, there's no one to quit to. You just gotta keep doing it.
Tell you what's interesting, right? That's a very different question to why did you start in the first place.
Like why don't you stop? What, that question?
Yeah, the question of like, why do you do it?
Okay.
But why did you do it?
Why did you do it? Why did you actually jump in and start?
Decide. Because from your previous life before comedy, how many people did you know that had ever stood on stage with a mic? How many people do you know would even do that voluntarily?
Yeah.
Probably no one I know.
Well, most people find public speaking to be one of the most scary things that they could possibly do.
Yeah, everyone says to me, "Oh, that's brave doing comedy." And to me, you're fighting a fear and you're going up and doing something against the nerves. But I'm far more afraid of other things in life that most people aren't. Yeah. So to me, it's just like a strange. I was talking to someone the other day, and she's an A&E nurse, and she said to me how a patient attacked her with scissors, but she wasn't afraid at all. Her heart rate didn't change because she had a mentally ill sibling growing up. So she encountered these situations before, so she was used to it. But then there was a power cut while she was in the storage cupboard, and she had a panic attack because she doesn't like the dark. And she was confused how you could be so unafraid of one thing and so afraid of something else, which seems like nothing compared to the other thing. And that was really interesting to me because it's our learned behavior of, we learned how to deal with that situation. We've been through it enough times to know that it doesn't always end in the biggest catastrophe ever. And I can survive it and I can deal with it. But then a situation like that where you don't feel confident is where it gets you. Yeah. And for me, having control of being in a room with a microphone in front of people, knowing I've got a set amount of time, knowing I have pre-prepared what I'm going to say to an extent, like I know what my jokes are, I know what I'm trying to get out of it, and if it doesn't go well, I can still leave. Right. I've got control over the situation. But then when there's things like driving to a place I haven't driven before, sometimes even having conversations with strangers, that stuff makes me nervous. Yeah. More so than doing stand-up.
And you've hit the nail right on the head, though. It's because it's outside of your control.
That's what it is for me.
So when something's outside of your control, and whether it be yourself or I think most people would agree, we like to know that we're in control of things. We like to know the variables, and it settles us to know that. Yeah. You know how bad something can be. You know how good it could be. Yeah. And you operate within that. But, being locked in a dark cupboard in a power cut with maybe not anyone knowing you're there, the mind can start wandering, and in a situation like that, you just don't know.
Do you? You panic.
You do.
Some scary shit.
It certainly can be. And let's face it, with me using scary shit as a segue, I'm gonna jump into and ask you about the thing I like to ask people when they come on this pod. I'm starting to realize I like to ask them what were their first thoughts when I asked them to be on this pod, and I told them what it required of them to be on the pod. Yeah. So when I approached you about this, what were your first thoughts in terms of doing this?
Well, first of all, as I said to you when I first heard about the podcast, I thought it's actually a great idea in terms of being a conversation starter for a podcast or a TV show.
I simply asked you that question just so you could say it.
Yeah, Roman's got good ideas.
No, go on, yeah.
Yeah, so I did think that first of all. And then when you asked me to be on the podcast, I was keen on writing it because I like to write and I like to reflect a lot and think a lot. But then also I was like, I could print off a couple copies because I've been ill lately, so this could come in handy.
Got you.
But I also thought like, in order to talk, I like talking about subjects they're pretty deep, but they're meaningful stuff to talk about. And what a better way to start it off than talking about your own life, but also your own sort of mortality as well. Yeah, like that's a dark thing to talk about, but you said to me earlier, you end up talking more about life than you do about death, and I think that's a really good way to begin a conversation. Yeah, so that's what I liked about it.
No, well, thanks for such a clear and it was an answer that made me feel like you really thought and philosophized about this, know?
Yeah.
But a lot of what you said, it kind of gave me goosebumps because that's a big part of why I wanted to start this podcast. Okay. It's not about being morbid or being dark, but I feel as though if you do consider your own mortality in life, then you live more. You will take chances. You will understand that time is valuable. So, you know, you kind of touched on a lot of that there. And I'm really happy that you have agreed to do it, man. I think just for the sake of it, I don't know whether or not I'm gonna do like an introduction at the top of this, right? Or if I should do it right now, because I'm just like flying all over the place with the structure of this podcast. But I must make it clear your name is Lewis Badham.
That's correct, yeah.
I got like, who is this person? Anyone who's listening now, they're like 13 minutes in and they're like, I don't know who he's talking to. That's if I haven't done an intro at the top.
My name will be on the title, though.
It will be on the title, yeah. You'll be there with a picture.
There we go.
But yeah, Lewis Badham. And we met at a gig. Like you said, it was your 6th gig in. It was. And you know, we've kind of been, I'd class you as a friend, dude. We've been in touch, we've spoken, we've had very deep conversations. And yeah, it's I don't think I could have done this podcast without getting you on it. Like, I'm really glad you've agreed to it.
Thank you. I'm glad you invited me, yeah.
No, bless you, man. So I mean, with no further ado, in that case, I am going to invite you to read your eulogy. And then we are going to have a chat about it.
Yeah, all right. So I want to begin by saying I don't like to be self-indulgent and talk about myself very much. I certainly don't like writing about myself. And you know as well, being a comedian, when someone says, can you write me a bio? It's like the worst thing.
Yeah, I agree. I totally get that.
So this is kind of like that, but about your entire life rather than just your comedy, which is maybe a little bit easier. But what I did was I imagined, of course you imagine your own funeral, but I imagined it was someone who was almost like a biographer reading about me based off what other people had told them. So there's a lot of things that people have told me about myself, and the person who would be reading it would be someone who didn't necessarily know me, but was reading it on behalf of my friends and family.
Got you.
So I hope that makes it make a little bit more sense, because otherwise it's just me talking about myself in a positive way. And you're not going to be negative at someone's funeral. You're going to be like, how good is this?
I mean, that all depends, Lewis. You know, I mean, that really depends. That might be the time where you let it all out.
But yeah.
No, but if there's
That's real closure.
Yeah.
See you later, dickhead.
But if there's ever a moment where I invite you to be self-indulgent, I mean, like, yeah.
This is it.
Shoot, you know? So over to you.
Okay. It was emotional doing this. So today we say goodbye, as well as celebrate the life of our friend Lewis. Lewis had a troubling start to life. By the age of 10, he had undergone 3 open heart surgeries. Despite that, he was still a happy-go-lucky and energetic boy with a love for football. This was demonstrated when he returned home from a double heart valve replacement, jumped out the car, ran out to kick the football into the goal that was a mainstay in the Badham garden. Until this day, he claims it went into the top corner. His parents disagree, but with no video phones or VAR, who are we to argue? This has always stood as a great example of Lewis's positivity and the need to get back to doing what he loves, no matter what obstacles were put in the way. This was again evident later in life when more open heart surgeries were required. He always recovered quickly, went back to playing football, socialising with his friends and working. Lewis was someone who put other people first. He had a great need to help the people that he cared about, often putting his own well-being to one side. This did catch up with him, of course, resulting in problems with his mental health, his physical health, but again he was able to overcome and turn it into a positive. Despite these difficulties, Lewis was always someone you could go to for advice, someone who could make you laugh, or someone who was there just to listen. He was proud of that. After working in recruitment for many years and building a good reputation, he decided to leave it behind to focus on finding a purpose. He was never satisfied with just existing for a paycheck. He always said, if you work hard at a job that you hate, you end up just spending all the money on trying to cheer yourself up. This led Lewis to change direction and do things that he enjoyed. Trying his hand at football management for his local Sunday team, studying to be a counsellor, and eventually building up the courage to try stand-up comedy. Lewis believed that he faced struggles in his life so that he could use what he'd learned to help other people who are now facing similar struggles. He wanted to share his experiences and show that things will be okay, and positivity and humour can be found in the darkest of places. He'd never married, but he leaves behind his beloved cat and dog, his collection of Bob Dylan pictures, posters and t-shirts, as well as a wide array of Manchester United memorabilia. And of course, many books that he only read halfway through. He could never sit still until now. Lewis will be sorely missed by his family and friends, but I know he'd be delighted to see you here today. I know if he were here, he'd tell you not to worry about him. He's happy. Things will be okay, and he'd want to thank you for making his life a happy one. That's that. Goodbye. Goodbye, Louis.
That's beautiful, man.
It's emotional stuff.
It is. It's
Really?
very emotional stuff, and you sent it to me because I get everyone to send me their eulogy ahead of time because I like to read it. I like to make a few notes, things that I want to like jump off of and talk about.
You're a professional.
Oh, well, I try to be. You haven't seen me 24 hours a day, but I do my best. But yeah, and you sent it to me, and whenever someone sends me anything to either read or to listen to, I have to be in the right frame of mind, the right place, the right space to sit down and appreciate it, especially if they've put their heart into it, And I read it literally like before I went to bed last night or this morning. It was like 1 a.m. or something like that. But I read it and I was like, this is beautiful. Like this is absolutely beautiful. And I just knew from reading it that I'd have a good chat with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
No, so firstly, thank you so much for doing that, and I know it's emotional. But let's get into it. Let's get into it. So first things first, a double heart valve replacement.
Yes.
So if you don't mind me asking, what's the condition that you have? What's the heart condition?
So I was born with something called a bicuspid valve, which from what I understand, and I'm still not an expert, even though it's been 35 years of this. I'm still not an expert, but it's like your heart valve is deformed and it just doesn't work properly. It's leaking. It's mutated when you're born.
Got you.
I also had something called an aortic regurgitation, where the aortic valve was leaking blood. And what they did, first of all, I was very sick when I was born, so immediately they did surgery to try and fix the aortic valve. They placed a catheter balloon in it, stretch it out so that it would work, and they thought they did. And then a few months later, I was really sick again, and like really bad, to the point where I couldn't keep any food down. I think I was 6 months old, and my late granddad said, "You got to take him to hospital." And they were like, "He won't make it through the night if you don't take him to hospital." So mum and dad, who were only 23 at the time, by the way, which is insane to me, being 35 now and can barely look after a cat and a dog. I'm like, imagine having a sick baby.
Yeah.
So they took me to hospital. The hospital said, "You need to get him to Great Ormond Street." And they drove from Slough to Great Ormond Street, took me in straight away, intensive care, and they did the surgery. They replaced my mitral valve, which they'd figured out was deformed, replaced it with a mechanical one. And I recovered. And then when I was 10 years old, I started getting sick again, but it was because I'd grown out of the valve, because of course it was made out of titanium and the rest of your body grows.
Got you.
Whilst investigating that, they discovered that the aortic valve was leaking again. So they thought, while we're in there, we'll change the other one. So they changed two. So as things stand now, I don't necessarily have like an ongoing condition. I just have two false limbs, if you like, that are inside and you can't see them. So I've got congenital heart disease, which is heart disease you're born with. But it has been fixed to the extent where it's using false limbs.
Understood.
So then when I was 17, I'd grown out of them again. So they had to replace them. And then I had two what are called ablations, which is a thing where they electric shock your heart from the inside because it kept beating out of rhythm, but that was unrelated to the valve. So that's six. So 4 big surgeries and 6 little ones.
Minor ones.
2 little ones, sorry. And that's up until now, yeah.
Got you. So where you're at, like at the stage now, because like you said, with a lot of that, what I gather is that your body was growing, but these things, they obviously stayed the same size.
Yeah.
So it was a case of having to go in, get them changed to resize them so that they fit with the size of your heart, etc., etc.
That's right, yeah.
But where you're at now, because obviously I imagine the body stops growing at some point.
Yeah.
So is there a case where those things still have to be changed, or is it now just a case of managing?
They might last forever, but what happens is scar tissue grows over the valve over time. And depending on how much scar tissue grows over, that's how blocked the valve can get, as well as how healthy you are and how healthy your heart is in general. So it depends on a few different factors, but overall, if everything goes according to plan, I may never need a surgery again on my heart. But it's kind of 50-50 really.
Okay.
There's no way of telling. The last checkup I had was like a year ago, and they said they're looking fine. There is a bit of scarring over it, a bit of stuff around it, but not enough to cause any problems. So every year I go back and they do have a scan and
they
everything.
have a little assessment. Okay, got you. And then obviously, like, one of the things that stood out for me, even in that first paragraph of your eulogy, you said like you came home from one of your major surgeries and immediately like you just like kicked the ball. You say it's top bins. Yeah. The parents, they might think slightly differently. But you had that positive attitude, that positive outlook, right?
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from?
I don't know, because I definitely lost it later in life. I've got it back again now, I'm proud to say, but I think it's just from being a kid. I think being a child, you don't know any different. Like, I'd been in and out of hospitals my entire life. It was just an inconvenience to me going to hospital.
Yeah.
And getting back home to your football, your games, your toys, that's great. Like, I'm not in that place anymore. So I think it was just that, really. Our parents were good. They weren't too overprotective, but of course they were still a bit, and you would be naturally. And it was also very new. When I had the surgery, it was 88, and I don't know this for a fact, but I've done research and I'm pretty sure, but no one's told me for definite. But I think I was the smallest person they'd ever done the surgery on at the time. Definitely in the UK. I don't know about the world, but definitely in the UK. So not a lot was known about how to manage your life after this.
Yeah.
So it was, don't do these things, but everything else, we don't know.
Figure it out as you go.
So my parents were good. They weren't overprotective. They were like, be careful about certain things, of course.
But live your life.
But yeah, live your life.
And you mentioned your parents were 23
at the time.
When they had you. Are your parents still with us? They're still alive?
Yeah.
Cool. And did you have any siblings?
Yeah, I got two younger brothers, but at the time I didn't. I'm 5 and 6 years older than them. So when I was 10, they were born, but they were young. Got
you. And when it came to their health, how are they in terms of health wise? Did they have any complications? Or?
Interestingly, they were both checked because we didn't know if it was genetic or not. Then 3.5 years ago, the middle brother had the same surgery, so he's got a mechanical heart valve now. Okay. The youngest has no heart issues so far.
Sorry, because you paused after no heart, and I was I was like the youngest has no heart issues. And I was like, whoa, how's he functioning?
Yeah.
But sweet.
He's doing fine. He's doing all right.
Okay.
But yeah, so we found out later in life that it is in fact genetic. It comes from my dad's side of the family.
Okay.
He's got a leaking valve, but not enough to need any intervention. And he only found out recently, and he's in his 50s, so that's got to be something to worry about. But yeah, my brother had to have the big surgery about 3 years ago.
Got you. And just so I know what I'm working with here, are you all Man United fans?
The middle one is a Bolton fan.
Oh no, all of you lot can get out.
I don't know what they did to him.
What happened to him? How did he become a Bolton fan?
Weird one. My granddad, who was a Spurs fan, was when they were coming up through the Championship, Big Sam was in charge. He said, you should keep an eye on this team, because we were all football mad, and he was a Man U fan at the time. And we all loved football, and he's like, keep an eye on this team, they're good. And then they came up, and then they had like a Kocha, and then they got Ivan Campo.
Okay, those were good days.
They were a really good team.
That's true, actually.
And then they got into Europe and stuff, and he started following more and more. And now all of us are invested in Bolton. We go to the games. We were at the Papa John's Cup final last year, where they won the cup at Wembley.
Not the Papa John's Cup final.
The Pizza Cup is big.
Lewis.
Mate, it was
the glitz and the glamour.
It was amazing, honestly. And this year they're going up for sure.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to the last game of the season this year, where they should get promoted as long as nothing goes horribly wrong. Yeah. And my brother's getting married, so it's his stag do present. And we're going there, and we've paid to go in the box and all this stuff. So
sweet,
it's going to be amazing. Really looking forward to it. And so we're all sort of semi Bolton fans now.
Yeah. Okay. That's
especially the way Man United are going.
Yeah. Well, you know. I mean, look. That's a topic for a whole nother podcast. To be fair.
Yeah,
I
it
could
would be
talk
here all
about. I
day.
could talk about Man United and that.
Mate, you want to talk
decline.
morbid?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Maybe we should do a eulogy for Man United. Maybe that should be the next one that you write. You know.
That's good. Yeah.
You know, I found it interesting that also you mentioned the fact that you put others first. You know, that you put others first, and you put your well-being aside, right? How exactly? In fact, yeah. So you said like you put others first, you put your well-being aside, and that resulted in mental as well as physical health problems. So this ability or this kind of like characteristic that you have to put others first and to kind of put your feelings aside, why is that? Why do you think that's a part of your nature?
It's very difficult to put your finger on why. I think some of us we take up roles of like a protector without even realizing we're doing it. For me, there are definitely things early on in my life that I still remember. A lot of it was protect my mum from, she was always, as you can imagine, like a crying wreck when I'd go in for surgeries. And I remember hearing stories of how difficult it was for her, especially when I was a baby, to go through it. So I think my natural thing was, well, pretend you're all right. I remember everyone was always so sort of complimentary of how I didn't cry and I was brave and I just took everything in my stride and I wore that as a badge of pride. And I think that became who I was. That became me. Was I'm the person who nothing phases.
Yeah.
And I'll help you through this. And as life went on, I just adopted that more and more. And I didn't really realize that isn't always the best way until I got to like late 20s, early 30s, and it caught up with me, to be quite honest. And all the traumas and all the things that happened that I had sort of brushed to one side and then sort of, you know, my side's on fire, but let me put yours out first. Mine was still burning after all that time. And then when I finally got back to it, it was out of control. And I think that's basically what happened in the end.
How did it, and please, like, I say this mentally, like in my own head, but I'm saying it out loud because I can think it, but I got to let the person know this, who I'm talking to. Like, don't talk about anything you don't want to. Yeah. You know what I mean? But
that's fine, yeah.
How did it come to a head in the sense of what was the catalyst moment when you felt like, hold on a second, I actually need to check in with me here?
I don't know if there was one catalyst moment, and I don't know if there often is. I think it's a build-up. Because there was the surgeries and stuff, but there was very difficult family things that happened as well that were massively traumatic, probably even more so than me going through the surgeries. Things that were happening in my family. So, and again, I was the organizer. I was the one that's like, let's sort everybody out. Let's, you know, without going into too much detail. My dad was unwell mentally. He went away for a while. I took on the role as dad for my brothers, and I was working and all my money was going into the house. My mum was working, but we were skint, and it was really difficult. And I'm on top of that, I'm managing everyone's sort of mental health and emotional support for everybody whilst working, whilst also trying to be an early 20s guy going out drinking with your mates and stuff and trying to live a normal life, but my life was far from normal.
Yeah.
So all of that was going on. So then when I got a bit older, I was also, I could go into so much detail, which would take a while, but I had a tough time in school as well. I was sick a lot in school.
Got you.
Had to have surgeries and things. I was a very socially anxious person in general, and especially in school. Struggled with like authority figures and was very afraid of my teachers and stuff like that. And I missed a lot of school. When I was doing my GCSEs, they put me in a special needs class, even though I was doing quite well in terms of grades and intelligence, but they were like, you've missed too much school, so we're going to put you in a special needs class. And I was only able to do like 4 or 5 GCSEs, which I fucking bombed.
Got you.
Didn't do well at all. Couldn't get into college, no uni, nothing like that. So it was like, well, we're going to have to go to work. So I went to work. And then my whole thing became about proving everyone wrong. Then my whole mission was build a career. My game plan was become a teacher.
Okay.
So then where the teachers will see me and be like, fucking hell, he's one of us.
Yeah.
Like, he can't be that stupid. He does what I do. And it was all about proving people wrong. And I had a fantasy of going back to a school reunion in 20, 30 years and showing everyone how successful I was.
Yeah.
In spite of all of what they told me, basically.
Just like those rappers, man. Like when the rappers make it, you know, and they're like, this is what all the people doing, believe in me.
Yeah, yeah.
Now look at me, I'm selling drugs on the corner, I got 2 baby mama. No.
Well, exactly right, yeah. And it's like, what is success, really?
No, but I hear you, though. I get it.
So I was doing all of that. Ended up getting a job in recruitment just by accident. And then it was like, I was making good money. Had a girlfriend, had a house, had a dog. All the stuff that everyone tells you should be getting by the time you're 30. But I still wasn't happy. And I was smoking a lot of weed. And basically had no sort of direction in life.
Yeah.
And I had these things that I dreamt about having, but they weren't satisfying me in any way. They weren't like, this is, you know, what was all this for in the end? And then the relationship ended and it was amicable. She wanted different things from life than what I did. And we're still pretty much best friends today. We've still got the dog that we co-parent. So that works out all right.
Sweet.
And the dog gets 2 Christmases. What more can you want? I mean,
What a lucky dog.
I know.
Dogs living better than some humans.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You need to tell her that.
Yeah.
And it ended and I was on my own and I was kind of like okay with it at the start. And then the more time I had to think, the more time I realised I'm really unhappy. And the weed took over. I was more weed than man by the end of it.
Sorry, you know how I say sometimes you know you feel you're a writer and you're funny because to say I was more weed than man. Sorry, that to me that's just hilarious. Yeah. I was more weed than man. Right. Oh,
that's what people mean when they say plant based.
I love it.
That's what I was. I was plant based.
No, I got you. Yeah.
So yeah, I was just so depressed because I didn't know what to do. Unhappy with my job, unhappy with everything. More self-reflection and exploration resulted in more problems and worries.
Yeah.
And yeah, I quit my job. Go on.
No, on that job factor, because there's a few things like since you like that popped into my head as you've been talking. One of them is someone once said to me, like, the people who seem the strongest, those are the people you need to check on. Right? Those are the people you need to check in on. And that feeling of you being a protector and realizing that you need to stay calm and stoic for all the people around you who might be emotionally really feeling it and things might be falling apart. It's a lot of weight to carry and to put on yourself. But I understand how you can adopt that sort of characteristic and think to yourself, I gotta be strong. But that's it. Like they say, those people who show that strength, you gotta check in on them. And make sure that they're okay, you know?
You definitely do. But then some people, of course, they just aren't comfortable with sharing it.
Yeah.
Even if you ask them. So I'd always encourage people to like seek out a third party if you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
Find someone to talk to. It doesn't have to be your mates. If you're worried about how your mates are going to judge you or how your wife's going to judge you, that's okay to worry about that, but speak to someone.
Yeah. I think it's so vital because you just can't do it all on your own.
Yeah.
The job recruitment, I found that very interesting when I was reading through your eulogy because I don't know a lot about recruitment, but what I do know of recruitment is that it can be quite a cutthroat industry.
It is. Yeah.
You know, it's fast paced, it's busy, it's long hours, but you have to be willing to maybe do a few things from time to time that aren't necessarily like the epitome of morality, you know?
Well, you're spot on.
But you strike me as someone who would be totally conflicted with that. You don't strike me as the kind of person who would do that sort of stuff and then go home and be like, mate, great day today.
Yeah,
you know,
mate, you're completely spot on.
So I was taken aback when I saw like you were in recruitment. So so I imagine that must have been quite a conflicting period of your life.
You're completely spot on. I wanted to make a lot of money, like everybody does, but I wasn't willing to sell myself for that. The company, especially that I worked for, was very much about targets and money, and that's the only thing. And I think they all are, because I tried moving to different ones and told them that was my issue with it. No, we're not like that, and they all fucking were. For me, it was about, obviously, for myself, I wanted to do well, But it was also like I worked in semiconductors recruitment, so it was all people that made microchips, and I worked with like Apple and Samsung, and it was really interesting stuff. Like people really at the cutting edge of technology that we use today now all the time, but back then, even though it was only like 10 years ago, back then it was just coming, and it was so interesting, and I loved that. I loved speaking to the people, having interesting conversations. I loved the thrill of getting someone a job and securing a deal, because it wasn't easy stuff. It was complicated stuff. But then there were people who would cut corners, who would perhaps they had tricks on how to get people to take a lower salary, these kinds of things. Whereas for me, it was like a lot of the time we were dealing with people moving to different countries with their kids and their families, and I didn't feel okay with it. I would still do it to an extent, but there was always a cut-off point for me where I was like, I'm not going to fuck this person. Like, I'm not going to mess them around. And my targets and my numbers and that failed because of that. And my boss even said to me once, you can't be good at this job. You might have to bleep this, but he said, you can't be good at this job because you're not a cunt. And I was like, that's actually the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Gave him a hug.
What a lovely backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
It was just like a compliment and an insult wrapped in one.
Exactly.
You know?
And he was right. Like, I couldn't do it. And I'm not saying I'm like fucking super moral and all the rest of it. And I was like trying to stand up for the rights of the workers and all this, but I was just like, it just doesn't feel right. Doing it.
I can appreciate that.
I feel okay with it.
They say that often in life, right? You end up doing jobs that reflect your personality. And I remember working for a bank, and I worked for, I won't say the bank, but I worked for a bank. It was a retail bank. And once you go beyond being a cashier, it's all about sales. And I remember like people coming in and they'd be in terrible debt. I'm talking like living in their overdraft or living like on a credit card and like thousands into it. And then you'd look at that and then you'd be like, have you ever thought about consolidating your debt into a loan?
Yeah.
And it's like,
that's not what they need.
When really, all you're saying is, have you thought about digging a deeper hole for yourself? Because we can definitely go a few feet deeper. It's for me, it was just every day was a conflict of my morals, and I'd go home, and when you spend a whole day fighting against your like own morality or like having to do things that question your own morality, you get home and you are gone. You're drained. You're physically, mentally, emotionally, you're drained because you know it's not who you are, you know?
I felt ashamed of telling people what I did for a job. I knew everyone fucking hated recruiters. I didn't want to be the person that everyone hated. Yeah. And I tried hard not to be that in my role. The candidates I had all liked me and we all got on great and they believed I had their best interests in heart. Yeah. Which I did. But telling a stranger you work in recruitment, they're like, this guy must be a prick. He must be a snake.
The preconceived
and I didn't like that. I didn't like people thinking that about me. And you're exactly right. I would only ever approach people if I thought that what I had for them was better than what they got now. Yeah. In terms of job, progression, money, or whatever. Even if on paper they matched the job, if I thought it was going to be a step back and it was going to make their life more difficult, I wouldn't contact them. Yeah. And the bosses and that be like, why aren't you talking to this guy? He's got this, he's got that. And I was like, he's not going to want the job. And if he does, he's going to last there 5 minutes and he's going to quit because this is worse than what he has. Yeah. I wouldn't want that.
And you know what? Like that's a sign of who you are in here.
Yeah, I just wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't cut out for it. But it was something where you could wear a suit to work, look like you were doing well. I used to think, if someone from school sees me on my lunch break and I'm walking around in a suit, they're going to think, oh, this guy's doing really well. Yeah. But really, a lot of the people that were working there were down and outs that, wanted to make as much money as possible, as easy as possible, and didn't care how they did it. Yeah. And I didn't fit that mold.
I hear you, man.
But I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: it's an experience that you had, but you also were able to recognize that it wasn't who you were. Yeah, and instead of just stay there and like break yourself down, you made the change. You know, one thing that I wanted to ask you: did you actually personally coin the phrase, "If you work hard at a job you hate, you just end up spending all the money on cheering yourself up"? Is that one of yours?
That's a Lewis original. Yeah.
You see, like, look at that. I highlighted that. I was like, that's good writing. I said, that's like you should put that on a T-shirt.
For me and for other people I know, it was weed. And it was like, why am I doing this? And I learned later that it was like you're covering up your misery. I'm spending all my money on it.
Mm.
Why am I miserable? Because of this fucking job.
You
so
know,
it's like you make this money,
yeah.
but then in your downtime, you're either so exhausted, you just end up spending your money on takeaways or booze or something.
Right.
Or you're so miserable, you're smoking, you're doing drugs, you're partying, you're doing something to cover it up. So that's where your money's going. So what are you even making it for?
How did you have that conversation with yourself, especially around the weed? Because being more weed than man. Sorry, let me not mess up your lines. But yeah, being more weed than man. Like, when was the moment where, in fact, yeah, when was the moment for you where you were like, okay, I need to shift this, man. Like, I can't just be wasting my life or just like spending my whole life smoking weed. You know what I mean?
It was a strange bit of serendipity where when you're smoking weed as regular as I was and as regular as a lot of people do,
yeah,
you can't imagine your life without it. And you don't think it's the problem. That's what it does to you.
Yeah.
You think you want to get to a point where, yeah, I want to be able to like function and do my work and stuff. And some people can, don't get me wrong, but a lot of people who are well in it, like I was, you want to be able to imagine yourself, even when you're older, I can go and do all the stuff I want to do. I can succeed in life and then still have time for this. You don't want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
So that moment never really came because it was always, this is going to be the last thing I fix.
Got you.
You know, I can fix everything around it and still fit it in. But I knew financially it was doing me in. Health-wise, it was going to get me eventually. And then I developed something called CHS, which is not very well known, but it's basically a stomach condition where you smoke so much, it affects the I'm probably going to pronounce it wrong, but it's like the cannabinoid receptors. You have them in your brain.
And you have them in your gut.
In your stomach.
I've actually heard about this. Like, it's just why they say like your gut is your second brain.
Second brain, exactly. Yeah. And mine was affected to the point where when I didn't smoke, I would throw up.
Got you.
And so every single night, in the middle of the night, because you're not smoking when you're sleeping.
I thought you would have mastered that.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was that moment when you said it, and both of us were in silence. Like, where's the joke?
I was thinking maybe I could have got some sort of humidifier and put something in it. Or so in the middle of the night, I'd wake up really sick, and I'd try and fight it, and then I would just be throwing up. I lost loads of weight. I looked terrible. Didn't know what it was. Went to the doctor's hospital. They were going to put a camera down there to see if I had something going on. I got diagnosed with gastroenteritis a couple of times, given tablets, didn't go away.
Yeah.
And then I found out online on Reddit, I read about CHS. I was like, I've got every fucking symptom of that.
Got you.
And teamed up with my mum to say, what we're going to do is, it was during COVID when lockdown was still happening, but it was kind of a little bit lighter. I'm going to come and live at yours, and I'm going to go cold turkey, rehab style, and see if it fixes this stomach problem. And it within days, it fixed it.
Wow.
And not only that, I was the happiest I think I'd been in years. Because I remember when I first started smoking weed regularly, I dabbled a little bit, and then I was having lots of problems at home and things, and I went to a party, and I smoked a bit of weed, and I was dancing and having a great time, and I thought, my God, this is the first time I felt like pure joy since I was a child, I think. So it was like this magical plant had fixed me of all my problems. And then, of course, you just want to keep doing it. But then when I quit, everything started getting better. I was more attentive. I was able to actually enjoy things on the TV and the PlayStation. And, you know, I was able to go for walks and actually appreciate it. I remember sitting outside having a coffee and thinking, oh, my God, I feel so happy I could almost cry. And it was like, it's because that fucking stuff was making me, that was the only thing that could make me happy. And now that it's gone, I'm realizing that everything else can make me happy too. And there was another factor as well before that. When I was having trouble, I managed to, I tried therapy a bunch of times, and I really, as much as I have a lot of gratitude and respect and sympathy even for the NHS, when it comes to mental health, they really let me down. Mm-hmm. Until I found again online, this is going to go off in a little bit of a tangent.
It's okay.
I don't mind. But remember that Michael Jackson Finding Neverland documentary?
Yes.
I watched that. The guy had a decent life, but had bad depression he didn't want to go outside. He couldn't find joy in anything. He didn't know why. And then it turned out it was childhood trauma that he'd misunderstood, because when you're a child, you misunderstand what's happening to you, but it still stays in your subconscious, and you need to almost relive it in order to re-understand it. And I thought, I wonder if that's the same with people who've had like surgeries and illnesses as children, because all the stuff he's talking about, I feel the same way, but my trauma was obviously very different. So I looked into it, and it turns out it's true, and there's not a lot of research on it, but there is a big correlating factor between people, and I was looking specifically for heart surgeries at the time, but children that had had heart surgeries, even babies, for example, you're taken away from your mum, which you need to be as close to as possible as a baby, into this cold place where you're prodded and cut and poked with by strangers. Like, that's going to mess anybody up.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't understand what's happening to you and it sticks with you. So I went looking into like trying to find therapists that specialise in this thing, and there wasn't many in the country. And I was lucky enough to speak to someone at the Royal Brompton Hospital who specialises in heart and lungs. And they had a clinical psychologist that worked there that specialised in people who'd grown up with chronic illness. And I managed to get an appointment, speak to him. After 6 months or a year of seeing this person, changed my entire life, my outlook on life, everything, and understanding chemically what things do to you, not just weed, but food, coffee, fucking sex, anything that interacts with the endorphins and the reward system in your brain. I didn't know any of this stuff. I learned all of that, and that made it easier to sort of understand, this is what the weed's doing to me. I couldn't really think about stopping because it was such an obstacle. But once I had that sickness and got off it, I noticed that I was enjoying things again. And then it was like, that's the chemicals that she was talking about. Like that, those endorphins that you get from the weed are such an unnatural dose that nothing else can match it. And now that it's gone, I'm enjoying stuff. So all of that coming together over the course of a couple of years is what got me to finally stop. And it's been like 4 years now and I haven't touched it. And it's like, so happy that that happened. And the sickness thing, although it was horrible, it was a blessing in disguise, really.
Yeah. Dude, goosebumps, man. Let me just shake your hand, honestly, to say congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is why I wanted to do this pod, because like I know you, but I don't know you.
Yeah, there's a lot.
You know, and there is a lot. And goosebump moment, because I always believe in being better, learning as much as you can, understanding life, understanding yourself, and the chemical side of things, from food to, as you say, alcohol, to drugs, right? The way that it rewires us, our brain and our stomach and our reward systems internally. And we get so wrapped up in it that we don't even realize what it's doing to us anymore. Right, we live our life, and it's almost like sometimes we can become zombified and not even realize what it's doing to us anymore. And I had a really honest conversation with myself about 2 months ago about my use of alcohol, and how that was how it was associated with me, or how I was associated with it, and my relationship with it. And you know, I just realized that there was a time in my life when I never drank. There was a time when I would never even consider drinking, and I'd still feel joy, and I could still enjoy, I could still be happy, and I could go out and I could have a good time, right? I'd function. I'd still function immaculately, and I'd never even think to drink. But for the last 20 years of my life, it's been there. You know, sometimes mindlessly, sometimes just as a thing to do, as a pastime. And then I made the decision of saying, I just don't want it to be in my life anymore. I just don't. And then slowly you start to realize, I actually do still feel joy without having a drink. I can go out and have conversations without drinking, you know. And so when you were talking about like just feeling happy again, like realizing that those chemicals were in your body, like they were reacting with you now, and you were happy without the chemical of weed or whatever the case may be, man, that hit me, because I was like, I feel like I'm going through that in this moment. I'm kind of like 2 months in, And obviously you got to be patient with yourself. You know, life throws different things at you. You never know what's around the corner. But I'm just conscious of the fact that I'm getting back to a place where I'm living.
Yeah.
And I'm not beholden to this thing.
But let me see if you relate to this, because this was a big thing for me. I read once, because I was on a subreddit group with people who were trying to quit weed, and I would always read the stories and try and get sort of inspired by them. And someone said that they finally realized that they thought they were smoking to help with their anxiety, to help with their anger, their depression, their boredom. And it turns out all of those things were basically side effects of when you weren't smoking. And I always explain it to people as like, it's like this thing in you, this weed, like I say, is more weed than man. It's like this thing takes over your brain where it's like, hey, this is good, isn't it? You like this. And then when you're trying not to do it, it's like, where's that thing we like?
Yeah.
Right, if I don't get it, then I'm going to start making you feel frustrated. I'm going to start making you feel sad. I'm going to start making you feel pissed off. And then you give in and you smoke, and then you're like, oh, those feelings have gone away again. And you think, well, I must need it because otherwise they're just going to be there. And then when you stop, you realize they were there because of it.
Yeah.
They were there as like punishment for not doing it. You've been punished and led around by this drug.
Yeah.
Do you feel any of those things where I was drinking because I was bored? I was drinking because I was feeling anxious or, awkward. And now you don't.
100%, man. Lewis, 100%. And you come to realize also that what provided you with the release or the relief was the first drink, right? Or the first, maybe in your case, the first pull, or maybe the first joint.
Yeah.
It's never the second or the third or the fourth. That's just habitual.
That's maintenance.
Right.
Just keeping it.
But it's the first one where you feel like, oh, I've given, all right. It's good now. The first pop of the bottle or the first sip of a cold beer. Like, it's always the first. But if you can delay that, if you can push that down and continually push it away and say, I'm not even going to have the first, you will discover that there's other coping mechanisms. You just naturally get back to a place where you're more leveled out.
I think,
And, I'm so glad to hear that you found that and that you've been there for 4 years. And I really, really hope that in 4 years' time, I can be saying the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's the realization, it's acknowledging it first, and then you can do something about it.
Yeah. And I also accept that if it hadn't been for the stomach thing, I don't know if I would have stopped quite as easily or maybe ever. I probably would have relapsed. I was lucky in a way that I had this thing. I was so, the sickness and the feeling and the not being able to eat and stuff was so bad. Whenever I would start getting cravings to smoke, just thinking about that would stop me.
Got you.
So I was almost kind of lucky I had something blocking me. So I got a big respect for anybody who tries to stop and doesn't have something like that that's in the way.
Yeah.
Because I can't imagine how hard it is. I quit smoking cigarettes recently. And again, it was because I got diagnosed with a different illness.
Got you.
And the fear was the motivator for, if I start smoking again, this illness is going to get worse and it's going to kill me, basically, eventually. So you just can't. And I have cravings a lot still, even now. But I'm like, you can't, because you know what it does. You know where this leads. So for someone like yourself who is trying to stop because you've noticed it yourself and you're fighting back against the current of, temptation, it's a very difficult thing to do. And I would never sit here and be like, oh, look how great I am because I quit this stuff, because I know I kind of had help in a way.
In essence, your why just has to be strong enough.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
And I think for me, my why is that I don't want it to be a case where health knocks on the door and says,
yeah, and it will.
You have to. Yeah. Because I mean, we're all getting older, right? And your body isn't as resilient as you continue to age. And I don't want it to be a case where my body says to me, if you don't stop doing this, bro, then, you know what I mean? I want to be conscious enough to say, okay, I'll curtail that now.
Yeah.
Because I've had my fun.
That's it.
I know the highs, the lows. I know what it can do.
That's right.
But let me move on from that now.
Yeah, spot on. The why has to be strong enough.
Yeah.
And you have to be strong enough to listen to it.
Yeah.
As well.
100%, you know. I have no doubt that you're going to make an excellent counselor. You mentioned that that's something that you were inspired to shift into. Yeah. So you did a bit of football management and then you shifted into counseling. How did you find the football management? How was that?
Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah,
but an amazing experience.
Got you.
And I still think I'll probably do it again.
Does it give you a little bit of empathy when you watch like football, like when Ten Hag comes out after a match and he's like, "Well, I believe we tried and we pushed." And is that good? I'm doing a good job there.
That's good.
And Casemiro, he just come back from injury. I know we are very shit at the moment, but we will get better.
That's good.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
But yeah, does it give you a little bit more like empathy when you see that and you're like, I know what they're going through?
It does, yeah. It's obviously, it's a different kettle of fish because you're dealing with like, highly trained athletes on a lot of money, big personalities, big egos. I wasn't really dealing with that. There's also money involved. And you also you train all day, every day. So you're with these people, you've got more time to mold them, you've got more time to know them. But then you also don't have that much control when you've got owners and stuff. So it's a massive, complicated thing.
Yeah.
For me, it was just my brother had a five-a-side team with a bunch of his mates. They always dreamed about going into 11-a-side. I obviously, with the heart condition, I'd play five-a-side with them sometimes, but I wasn't able to do 11-a-side. But I always was interested in management and the psychology of football.
Right.
A little bit the tactical side, but more like the psychology of overcoming challenges and coming together as a group and trying to get everyone thinking the same way and that kind of stuff. So he said, we want to start an 11-a-side team and we want you to manage it. So I ummed and ahed about it, and then I thought, you know what? It's harder. What did I say? I said, it's easier to regret things because all you have to do is not try it.
Yeah.
I don't want to be old sitting there. I wish I'd tried management, but it's too late now. So why not give it a try? If it's shit, if I'm rubbish, at least I tried. At least I know that I'm rubbish. And we did okay. We weren't great. We were a ragtag bunch of fucking just lads.
Yeah.
Some were good, some weren't so good. We tried our best. I tried my best to create an atmosphere where people really cared about this team. Like, this is our thing. This is a bunch of lads out of nowhere. And I used to remember saying to them, imagine in 20 years' time, you bump into your mate in the pub and say, "Oi, what about that team we had?"
Yeah.
And that was my motivator. So don't be lazy now and don't, phone it in now because you'll regret it when it's all done.
Yeah.
This is our thing. We're going to be proud. We're going to have other people saying fucking hell, those lads done really well. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the tactical side. I enjoyed the organisation, but it was so difficult to leave people out of the team. It was so difficult to, and especially a lot of them were friends, my brother's friends. So if you would leave someone out or if you would have a go at them or tell them they were doing something wrong, you'd go home, you go around to my mum's later and they'd be sitting there in the garden and you'd have to talk to them.
Totally awkward.
So it was awkward. It was uncomfortable. And I was trying to manage personal relationships as well as this. And I did always used to say, if I didn't know these people, it'd be so much easier just to tell them what I wanted out of them and what they're doing wrong. But I have to pussyfoot around and be nicer. I didn't want to be horrible to anyone, but at the same time, you need to say, look, you're fucking not doing what I said. And if you don't, then someone else is going to come and do it. But you're also I'll see you at Christmas. So you couldn't really do it.
It's a fine balance, isn't it?
So
it's a fine balance.
Yeah, my cousin, my two brothers were in the team. One of my best friends was in the team. All of their friends, people I'd known since they were kids. So that's what made it difficult. So I did it for a couple of years and we did all right. But unfortunately, it was around COVID. When we first started, after a few months of the league, the first big COVID came and all of football got wiped off for a long time. And then the second time we started up again, second season, got about 3/4 of the way through the season, doing all right. So upper mid-table, we sort of felt like we could finish quite high if we carried on going. We'd figured some things out. We were playing much better, had a good pre-season. And then again, another lockdown. Season got cut off again. And then we started preparing for the third season and then a few players quit, a few players had kids and stuff and didn't want to play anymore.
Yeah. And
it was we need to sign some more players. But honestly, I'm doing this stand-up now. And if I have to go and do a show on a Saturday night and I've got football Sunday morning, I'm choosing the show. So
yeah,
I can't do it anymore. But my good friend Dan, who was a player at the time, and he was our sort of coach. He would manage the coaching sessions. He's a fitness instructor, so he'd do all of that. He's the manager now. I'm the chairman, the secretary, the treasurer.
Okay.
So I still organise all the games, look after the money, do everything on the admin side.
Yeah.
I just don't go and manage the team. So I'm still involved because I felt bad about the people that did want to carry on playing. I felt like I don't want to take this away from them because some of them won't go to another team.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, it's good to know you're still
still involved. You're still involved. Still a ball ache.
I can imagine. I imagine the admin side can be more of a ball ache sometimes.
I was doing all of it back then.
Yeah.
That was another thing. I
Jeez.
was managing the team, but I was also doing all the stuff I'm doing now.
Man, you know how to make your life easy, don't you?
I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
But you mentioned there that if the stand up, that obviously if there was a show to go to, you're picking stand up over it. So, when did you kind of make that decision to say, right, I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna give stand up a go?
Well, so I always kind of fantasized about it. When I was a kid, I loved stand up. Used to love Jack D. And mostly I loved like the panel shows. I loved all the comedians and all the panel shows, never mind the Buzzcocks. This is before 8 out of 10 Cats. I used to like They Think It's All Over. There wasn't many comedians on there. All the panel shows I used to really enjoy, and always sort of fantasize about being a comedian. And during lockdown and stuff like that, and I was writing for so the job I have now is I work for a relocation company, and I write articles for their blog.
Okay, cool.
As well as doing other like marketing and content related stuff. But I'd write articles, and even in recruitment, I used to write funny songs about recruitment and put them on LinkedIn, and I got great responses about how funny it was.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I could do something in comedy. That'd be a good idea. And it was just like kind of a pipe dream. And me and my ex, I used to always be doing stupid fucking sketches and skits around the house and voices and telling jokes and things. She'd be like, you should do something. You should be on TV or something because you're doing some funny shit.
Yeah.
And then one day, her neighbour, her friend's neighbour was a comedian. And Mia said to him at the pub, my friend wanted to be a comedian. And he said, I'll tell you what, give me his number. I'll have a chat with him. And then out of the blue one day, she said, this guy wants to talk to you about comedy. So he called me up and I chatted to him for about an hour and a half. And he was like, and I'd already had ideas of what kind of comedian I wanted to go. I thought about it a lot. I said to him, like, I like the Mike Birbiglia style and like John Mulaney style of storytelling. Like I really like that.
Yeah.
And I told him about like I've got heart condition, so I've got like a background of something that's quite different to everybody else. And he loved all of it. And he said, you know what, I think you should really go for this because you've got some ideas already of where you want to go with it, what kind of comedy you'd like to do, and you've got something that makes you stand out. So I think you should give it a try. He's like, while we're in lockdown, you can do these online courses, like 6 weeks Zoom course, just to teach you how to like put material together, all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's a nice idea. I said, but look, I ain't got any money. Like I'm on furlough, I'm earning like the minimum amount of money. I just won't be able to do it. And he said, look, I'll pay for it. I'll do it. So he paid 80 quid for me to go on this course.
Oh, that's lovely.
Complete stranger, never met him before.
Yeah.
Absolutely blown away by it. And I call him my comedy godfather. I'm a fairy godfather. So he really sorted me out with that. Did the course. I did well on the course. People were impressed with me and thought I had some good stuff.
Yeah.
And then when the first lockdown ended and they opened the comedy clubs again, I found Comedy Virgins online. And I thought, I have to try it for him. I have to go and do this set because if I don't, he's going to think this guy was just wasting my time.
Yeah.
And then you're listening to more podcasts, you're getting into the books and the audio books all about comedy. And then the more I did, the more it resonated with me. The more I was like, all these people that I'm learning about, all these like famous comedians, all had like difficult starts to life, felt a little bit lost, tried other careers, and then fell into this. I was like, maybe that's the path I'm heading down. Like,
yeah.
And probably same for you and everyone you know in comedy is the same. So I was like, maybe this is the right thing for me. And I went and did my first set. I did well. And like I said earlier, like you get up there, you're terrified. You got all your stuff. The guy who helped me was massive. He got me to do my 5 minutes over the phone to him the first time. Helped me tweak it.
I am curious as to who this guy is. Do you want to name drop him? You don't have to.
Yeah, I don't think he'll mind. Yeah, you know, Abandoman.
A Banda Man.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Rob,
He's
yeah.
lovely,
He's
man.
honestly the best guy.
Yeah.
I'm still in touch with him now. I don't speak to him as much because he's very busy. He's doing fucking great stuff.
That's so wonderful.
But he checks
man.
in sometimes and sort of sees how I'm getting on. And
yeah.
after my first gig, he was like so happy for me, and then I got my first paid spot. He was happy, and yeah, it was amazing.
He's great. I and the thing is, like, I've met him once, and he's got such a lovely, bright energy.
Yeah.
And when you told me that someone paid for your you to do this 6-week course online, in my mind, I just thought to myself, whoever did it, you know that person loves comedy.
Yeah.
Because they have to love comedy, because they want you to go and have the same experience of comedy and feel the same joy and love from it.
That's exactly right.
So in my head, I was like, whoever it is, I know that they love it. And then when you say it's him, I was like, I could just see that bright, bubbling energy.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It
makes
sense now, you know? But yeah, sorry, you were saying, go on.
Yeah, so it was amazing. Yeah, so as I was saying, when you do first gig, you go up there and you get your first laugh, and you're like, ooh, that felt like heaven. It felt like drugs.
Yeah.
And everyone after me, like a couple of the other comedians, were like, that was your first time, that was really good. And obviously your confidence is fucking up here.
Right.
So then I never turned back after that. I made a plan, do 5 comedy virgins, different material every time.
Yeah.
Take out the best stuff, put that into a type 5, and then go out into the world and do it. Yeah. And it sort of worked like that. But then I realise now that sometimes some things will work on one night, not on another, and you learn that as you go. But
you learn it, yeah.
Just the more I got up there, the more I enjoyed it. The more I just, everything about it, even the travelling to the gigs I enjoyed, like everything about it that I hate now.
It's funny.
It was good at the time.
Yeah, it's funny how that goes. Like, you know, it's the social element, the getting there early, the staying late, you know, and then you get to a stage where it's like, right, where am I on in the lineup?
Yeah.
Am I first? Oh,
like,
fantastic. That way I could get back home.
I'll just lean out the car, give it a mic. Yeah, what about it?
Did you win Comedy Virgin? Did you ever win Comedy Virgin?
I won it on my second gig.
Oh, we got
I saw your trophy.
That in common. Yeah, you were. Oh, let me show the camera the trophy.
Yeah. Mine's the same, pride of place in the living room.
This is like the first thing I ever won, man. This is it, right?
Yeah. Hold it up closer so it looks bigger. Yeah. That's a trick I learned somewhere.
There we go. There it is, baby. If you're not watching on YouTube, then
there's a massive trophy.
Yeah, it's the size of my appendage. But no, amazing, man. And yeah, like, you know, I know you mentioned earlier, like, you kind of like said it flippantly in the sense of like, you're not as much a comedian as me because you don't gig as much, right? I know you said that as an aside, but I genuinely believe that I think you've been a comedian. A lot of people are comedians before they realize they're comedians, you know, and they just have, it's like a math. It's like they just know how the calculations work, and they can see it,
putting it actually,
you know, and I really feel like you're one of those people. And I often identify in others what I feel like I lack in myself. Right. I've always been a performer, getting on stage, having a microphone, being in front of people. For some reason, I can't tell you why, but that's never really fazed me. I've embraced that. I've enjoyed that. But then the writing is the side that comes harder for me. Yeah. So when I see people and I can see they've got the writing, I just identify it, and I'm like, oh yeah, like, because my brain doesn't work exactly like that, but I can see theirs does, you know.
See, I'm the opposite to you. I'm more like, remember the Gorillas, where it's like no one knew who they were. It was just like cartoons. If I could do that in comedy, I'll be fine, because I can write, I can do the jokes, I can do all that stuff. But getting up on stage, making myself that vulnerable, going into the unknown, where, like, I know I say I got control over the situation, but you don't have full control. You're going to get some drunk idiot. You're going to get something happen out of your control. You're going to get a joke that goes wrong. It gets misunderstood and you end up looking bad. That stuff scares me a lot. And I don't know if I trust myself to get out of it. I know where all the hits are to get the laughs. But if something sways that, like that's scary for me. So I'm not a performer, and I've got a deep fear of being embarrassed. I really don't want to be embarrassed in any way. Everything I do is I try and make it as perfect as possible, so I come across as well as possible. So performing is hard for me.
I think one of the biggest things to acknowledge as a performer, and anyone who kind of like goes out and tries anything, is that you're gonna fall.
Yeah.
You're going to fall down. You're going to fail. You will be embarrassed at times. And that is where the learning happens.
It does.
And that's the only way. The only way to learn how to cope is when you are on stage and some idiot shouts out, "Oh, you're shit." What do I do now? You know what I mean? Like, what
other than agree,
right? Right. It's like, what's my reaction? How do I deal with it? And it's continually putting yourself in those positions that will give you the tools.
I agree. It is the only way. It really is, and it's the same with everything. It's the same with anything you try. It's saying you've got to be the fool before you're the master, or something like that. Where so you got to make a twat at yourself sometimes before you master whatever it is you're trying to do. But for me, someone who, not so much now, but was fueled by instant gratification, I don't want to feel those bad feelings. Yeah. So I would try and avoid them at all costs. So when it comes to gigging and stuff, I think I've only bombed like properly once.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was at Cafe Mode. Obviously, it was a bunch of drunken fucking lunatics who just weren't listening to me having their own conversations. And I was still pretty green, so I sort of just tried getting through my material. Yeah. And then someone else went after me, did just as bad. Someone else went after me, did pretty good because they scrapped their material and just talked to the audience. And I was like, that's what I learned from it. It was horrible to go for it, but I learned from it. But doesn't mean I want to go and do it again.
Understood. And, you know, most people feel that way about Cafe Mode. And if you don't know what Cafe Mode is, it's basically it's like a comedy club at the bottom of a pizza restaurant. And that's all I'm going to say, because the guy who runs it might watch this podcast someday, and I don't want no beef.
We like him. He's a good guy. It's not his fault the audience hates us.
But no, I get you. And you know what? If you prepare as much as you can so that those occasions don't, or those events don't happen as often, then that's great. Preparation is key in many, many respects. Yeah. But you learn to kind of like play the room and play the situation that you find. And that's just all time and experience.
You definitely do. And I feel like I haven't gigged enough to encounter enough of those situations to get myself off it. When I get back to gigging, I want to host gigs.
Yes.
Just exclusively for a little while. Because I know I've got the material. I know I can write more material. But I want to get used to dealing with those unknown situations.
Yeah.
And that's my weak spot. That's my weak point. So that's the plan.
And that's the best way, man.
Eventually.
It's the best way, you know. You will, man. You will. I'm going to touch on a few things before we bring this episode to a close, but there's a few things and I'm going to just check in on them. So, I mean, I remember you said you spoke about your dog and your cat.
Yes.
Right? And most people say cat and dog, but you said dog and cat. So I'm curious, which one do you love more?
It's not so much a favorite.
Don't worry, they can't hear you. They can't.
They hear everything. They'll be watching it when it comes out. It's more about age order.
Okay.
We got the dog first.
Okay.
So I think that's why.
All right. Have you always been an animal person?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've always had dogs and cats growing up. I've not always been like super interested in animals. I didn't want to be a vet or anything, but yeah, I've always liked having animals.
You've enjoyed their company.
Yeah,
I got you.
Always been a pet person.
Bob Dylan.
Yes.
How and why?
Again, this could be another podcast.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Don't know. Started liking him mid-20s. I used to listen to all kinds of weird music. I had different phases and stuff. Bob Dylan was someone I liked. The more I listened to him, the more I enjoyed his stuff. He, especially his early stuff, is very folky, tells stories. He did a lot of stuff during like the civil rights movement, about songs about injustices. He did a song about the death of Emmett Till, which if you haven't heard, it's fucking incredible. Like one of the most amazing things.
Black Power.
So all of that sort of stuff, always at the time especially, really resonated. A lot of like really interesting stories from history as well, like old stories and stuff. So that got me into it. I thought he's an interesting guy. And then the more I watched documentaries about him and stuff, and just got really interested, and just ever since I've just been obsessed, really.
You got a favourite song?
That's something us Dylanites find it hard to decide on.
Dylanites, okay, this is deep.
There's always different songs. Because again, Reddit, I'm in the Dylan subreddit.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, someone asks you your favourite song, and it's like, it changes all the time. I think Shelter from the Storm is up there at the moment. Yeah, that's probably the one I'm enjoying most at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah,
He's got some beautiful
because otherwise
songs,
I could probably name a bunch and then try and decide which one, and we'll be here all night. So
I'll take Shelter from the Storm.
But
I'll give it a listen.
I went to see him in Dublin.
Was it?
A few years ago.
Was it good?
It was. No. he's old and he can't sing, but just seeing him was like seeing God in the flesh. To me, was like, oh my, that's him standing there. Like I'm in the same room as Bob. Like,
yeah, I feel you.
And when he pops his clogs, mate, that's going to be a difficult time for me. Him and Alex Ferguson. I hope I go before them, to be quite frank.
Oh, come on, no. You got a lot more living to do than those two. Come on now, Lewis.
Take it.
I recall you saying in this conversation that you used to make songs and put them on LinkedIn. What, comedy songs or something?
Yeah, so...
You still got any of those floating around?
They're still on LinkedIn.
Is it?
Yeah.
You got any on a hard drive? You sent it to me. I could try and edit it into this podcast.
I didn't sing the songs.
Oh.
No, I just wrote them. Just wrote the lyrics. Yeah. Oh. So it was Stan by Eminem.
Oh, okay. And you kind of like rejigged it to be...
It was a recruiter chasing a candidate.
Oh, wow.
And then I did another one for My Name Is by Eminem as well, which was...
Dude, that's
a recruiter introducing himself to a candidate, I think it was.
Yo, that's... please send me the links to those. Yeah, I want to check them out.
Eminem again. I did... what's the one he did? Guilty Conscience.
Yeah.
Where it was...
Voices.
And it was a conversation between the candidate and the recruiter, him trying to convince him to go for a job and him saying, I don't want to go for the job. So I did 3 of those and they got good responses, but
I mean,
they're very silly.
But honestly, like that just shows your level of comedic creativity right off the bat, man. Like that's before you even did your course.
That was before the course, yeah. It was back in the day.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because it was one of the last things that you said in your eulogy, and that was that you're leaving behind a bunch of half-read books because you can never sit still until now. So you finished off with a joke in there, like the sign of a true comedian. But is that something that you would say kind of like permeates through other things in your life?
I think so, yeah. With the books thing, it's mostly... A lot of the time I get what I want out of the book and don't finish. Because I don't really read like novels and stuff very often. It's often like factual stuff, historical stuff, biographies, things like that. So I get the most interesting stuff out of it and then tend to switch off. Or I buy them to read on holiday and don't finish it in time. And then it just sits there, you know, all crinkled pages where it's gotten wet and like you just never fucking look at it again. So there's that. I think there is a lot of stuff that I start, definitely like little projects and things that don't quite get finished. But then there are things where sometimes I have to finish and I'll begin something and not be able to stop until it's finished, no matter how late it gets, no matter how tired I get. But I do think that comes from knowing that if I stop and say I'll get back to it, I won't.
Got you.
So it probably comes from my inability to finish things.
Yeah, I hear you.
Which the ladies like. You know what I'm saying?
I go, yeah.
It's not true.
What? You mentioned that. Man was like, that's not true. I'm joking.
Anyone?
But I know, like you said that you haven't been able to gig as much.
Yes.
You know? But how does your love for comedy still hold up, and your willingness to want to get back out there and gig? What's your thoughts on that?
It's actually been really conflicting because while I still really want to, and I will, I find it hard to watch any comedy, listen to any podcasts, even look on social media, any comedy. I can't look at it because I get that FOMO, and I also get down about the fact that I can't perform at the moment.
Yeah.
So my love is still there, but it's out of sight, out of mind most of the time. I've just done this counselling course, which I finished yesterday. So my plan is to get back to spending my time doing some more writing.
Yeah.
I've got a book, Adam Bloom book, that I'm reading at the moment. And whenever I read it, even a couple of chapters, I'm so inspired to go and write stuff or go back and tweak other stuff. But I haven't touched it for months now because, again, I know if I sit there and I write stuff and I come up with things, sometimes I can't sleep because I'm thinking about being on stage and thinking about, an idea, and I would like jot a note down on my phone, and then that takes me away somewhere else thinking about something else, and I'm like, if you can't even go and try it, so what's the point of even thinking about it? Because you just frustrate yourself. So the love is still there, the need to do it is still there. It's changed from the beginning, where I was like, I'm going to make a career out of this, is how I started thinking about comedy. Now I'm just like, the thrill, the enjoyment, the hobby, the idea of creating something that is completely your own, and then going out there and have it be appreciated. And also, with all of the stuff I've spoken about, mental health, physical health, blah, 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 I'd love to do more talking about personal things that leaves a decent message where people, an audience, can enjoy the comedy, enjoy the jokes, but there is also something there that might help them in their life in some way. And I know that sounds a bit, don't really know what the word is.
Whatever the word is that you find, I'm going to disagree with you. Because you're
preachy.
Nah, not at all.
I don't want to be that kind of person, but I do genuinely feel like when I first started, it was like I wanted to be a counsellor, and a lot of people had said to me, "You'd be a good like therapist and stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll give that a try." And I looked into it, and it just seemed so difficult. It seemed like so much study and so much money. I was lucky enough to find this course I'm doing now, which is like a free open university course, very short, just the first step. I can't work with it with this qualification, but it takes you on to the next one where you can, and just like, just explore it, see what it's all about, kind of thing. I've got time.
Yeah.
But the other thing was like, comedy is therapy, not just for us, but it can be for the audience. Like, no matter what you've got going on in your life, for that, however long, hour and a half, even 10 minutes, you're only concentrating on what this person's saying.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about your sick relative. You're not thinking about your job. You're concentrating on what this person's saying, and they're making you laugh. They're making you feel joy. And if they can also tell you something or share something that makes you think a little bit differently about that situation that's in the back of your mind, then that's a double whammy. Like, and if I could do that, then that's almost just as good as being a counsellor. And ego-wise, it's good, because I'm getting on stage and getting clapped and everyone going, "Oh, come on, mate, good set."
100%.
You don't get fist bumps when you come out of the therapist office after you just help the client.
I don't think any clients are fist bumping and
or a free pizza.
asking to buy you a drink. But no, I totally get where you're coming from. Also, congratulations on the counselling course.
Thank you, mate. Yeah,
like you said, it's the first step.
Yeah.
It's something that I inquired with you about to find out a bit more about it, because it's something I've been interested in. But 100%.
You'd really enjoy it, like even just helping you, like learning things about how to deal with in your own life is helpful too.
Yeah,
definitely.
No, well, I mean, definitely, it's something I am going to look into. I've said it on the podcast now, so I kind of have to.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, be checking.
It's good to know that obviously your love for comedy is still very much there.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes, especially the way that the circuit is, so many people, they come and go, and you can sometimes wonder where people have gone to.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're dealing with things, but your passion for comedy is still there, and that you'll be back. Like, I look forward to it personally.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, I definitely will be. I got a gig booked in April, which I'm hoping I can do. Remains to be seen how health-wise how I'm doing when it comes.
Yeah.
But I'm still, as it stands, doing that. Nothing booked in afterwards, but after the summer is when I'm getting back to it. Yeah.
Lovely. Well, listen, man, I'll keep my ear to the ground for you.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to gigs, MCing opportunities.
Yeah,
but more importantly, just writing opportunities. I feel like if you've never written a script before, like things like that.
A little bit.
I feel like that would be something to try your hand at, because sometimes these things come up. The BBC have like writing opportunities. And I just feel like your comedy brain is one that needs to continue flourishing in whichever guise, whether it's on stage or behind.
Yeah, it's also good stuff. I did write. I started writing a sitcom.
Yeah,
about a Sunday League football manager. Obviously,
there you go.
Because there's none of it.
Nah, and it's something you listen. They say write what you know.
Exactly.
That's why most of my jokes at the start were just about wanking.
Yeah. I was pretty pleased with it, but then obviously I didn't finish it. So it's the story of my fucking life. I did 3 episodes and was like, it's on board now.
Well, listen, 3 episodes, it's enough to basically pitch that.
Possibly, yeah.
But yeah, man, listen, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Genuinely, thank you so much
really enjoyed it.
for coming through. I really wanted to end this podcast or these podcasts with like a really deep question, right?
Okay.
And I realized I had this deep question that my last guest, Luke Chilton, kind of made me realize it wasn't deep at all. It was just a really silly question.
It wasn't Luke Chilton, by the way.
No. It will be by the time this comes out.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Skip that bit. Cut that out. I was
Listen,
like, if he sees this, he's going to be upset.
Listen, you don't tell me, how my show runs, I know the order of my guests, bro.
Sorry.
But yeah,
too many Lukes.
But I know. I started with 2 Lukes. But what I did want to ask you, and this is what I think I'm gonna ask guests as a parting question.
Yeah.
Is what's the one piece of advice that you know you should take, but you just haven't?
Oh. A funny response is quit comedy, but I just never will take that advice.
Yeah.
One piece of advice. Well, there's something I said to you the other day that I thought about this as well. It's like, I never do that, so I don't know why I'm telling other people. But I said about nerves before a gig, and I said this to someone else as well. The lady I was talking about at the beginning, the nurse, is that like nerves and fear are there to protect us. They're there to up our response levels, to up our awareness. So when you're feeling nervous about going on stage and nervous about doing badly, or nervous about anything you're doing in your life, remind yourself that that's just your brain and your body making you extra alert so that you don't make a mistake. When you are too relaxed, that's when you make the most mistakes. So just go for stuff, no matter how nervous you feel, and accept that those nerves are there for you, not fighting against you. But having said that, I still avoid many situations out of just a bit of anxiety and a bit of nerves. I'll find a way around where I don't have to encounter that. And I know that's wrong, but I go with the first feeling. And that's probably what I would like to do better myself, and always have that advice for other people when they're nervous or afraid. But yeah, I don't do it myself. And I know it's good advice, but I just don't listen to it because I don't want to feel it.
Well, I think this could be the moment that changes. And you saw it right here. No, but great, man.
Well,
Thanks for that, buddy. Listen, Lewis, it's been a pleasure talking to you here on Eulogise Me. And I thank you for being as open and as inspirational as you genuinely have been throughout the course of this.
Oh, thank you.
And it's just great to know you, man. I'm glad our paths crossed, and I'm glad we were able to document this episode.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you so much for having me on. And like I said, I knew it'd be a great idea. We always have good chats anyway. And it's only fair to share that with other people. Otherwise, they're missing out, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. We can't have them miss out. We can't have them miss out on our great chats.
Yeah, exactly right.
Bless you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Amazing.